Mr. Weber is recognized for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Steer, in your exchange with my good friend Eddie Maurice Johnson from Texas, you got pretty exuberant one time, and you said there's 25 billionaires involved. You remember that exchange with her? You remember that? Yeah. So I take it, because of the, I guess, status of being a billionaire, I take it in this current presidential campaign, you would be a Donald Trump supporter? So here's my question for you, Dr. Steer. If climate change theory is right, assuming that all other countries comply, that all the other countries comply and don't cheat, then we will all stay equal, as it were, quote unquote, in our respective competitive positions. We're talking about global marketing now. But if the theory is wrong, or if countries cheat, not that they would ever do that, the U.S. stands to lose the most in terms of our competitive position. Does either one of those two scenarios I just laid out concern you?
Well, as I think it was Mr. Yulee made the point that actually at the moment the United States, for example, has a great cost advantage in electricity. Consider the steel industry. In Indiana, the cost of electricity to the steel industry is about 60% what it is in Hebei province, which is the sort of big steel section of China. Under the U.S. Clean Power Plant, the estimation is that electricity prices will rise between 5 and 10%, and then would fall back down again. So even under that, we don't have to worry about the competitiveness of the United States steel industry. The academic evidence.
That's really my question is, are you concerned about either one of those two scenarios, whether we lose our competitiveness or that the other countries would cheat? Are you concerned about either one of those?
I fear that we will lose our competitiveness if we do not act on climate
change. If you don't act. Yeah. Mr. Yulee, let's go to you. Do I need to lay out those two scenarios again? Are you
Congressman, it's a very big concern. I mean, all you have to do is look at what's going on in Europe. In Europe, energy-intensive industries are becoming an endangered species. And they're even recognizing now that they have a real problem. And when you talked five years ago in Europe about energy, it was all focused on climate change. Now there's still a focus on climate change, but they're talking more now about competitiveness and how they're going to position themselves in a competitive world. And I think we're headed down the same path if we're not careful. And I would like to point out about China and China's adoption of renewable energy. It's also true that China has under construction planned about 460 billion watts of coal-fired power plants. And India has about 360 billion watts of coal-fired power plants either planned or under construction.
So are you suggesting we sic the EPA on them?
Well, I'm just saying, you know, India made a pledge in Paris, and after Paris, they still said that they're going to go ahead with their goal to double coal production in India in 5 years. So while a lot of countries are making baby steps toward renewables and alternative technologies, coal is still going to be the go-to fuel for providing electricity in these countries.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Christie, I'm coming to you, those same two scenarios. Are you concerned about either of those two scenarios?
Well, look, you're talking about if the climate models are wrong?
Well, if climate change theory is right, okay, then assuming all countries comply and don't cheat, and we all stay equal, as it were, in our respective competitive positions. But if it's wrong, or if those countries cheat, then we lose our competitive position. Are you concerned about that?
Well, the one I study is the climate model issue the most, and the evidence to me indicates they're wrong. The data is not matching up with.
And you're very concerned about that?
I'm very concerned. That's why I showed the picture.
Let me move on to Mr. Groves. Thank you. Mr. Groves, I know you raised the constitutional issue, which I appreciate, and I'm concerned about that. But just us, you and me talking now, the scientists don't get the constitutional issue. So
and I don't get the
you didn't hear me say that, right? But would you be concerned about this scenario as well?
Well, the area that I would be concerned about is noncompliance by the other parties. I mean, the U.S.
Thank you.
tends to take its treaty commitments much more seriously than other countries. That goes to arms control treaties, that goes to human rights treaties. And even if the U.S. joined this one and lived up to the letter of its commitments, I wouldn't be confident that countries like India or China or even developing countries around the world would find it economically feasible to live up to their commitments.
So we would be tying our, as it were, proverbial arm behind our back.
Since we would be complying and they would not, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.